What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show for Sherdog.com with me, Shawn Sheehan. And today, what I want to talk to everyone about is the Eagle FC 44 card, which went down on Friday night over in Florida. That's a bit of an inside joke for anyone to watch. But for anyone who didn't, and even the people who did, I wanted to come on and I wanted to kind of discuss the card itself. I'll talk about the fights towards the second half or maybe the end of this video, but I want to talk about the overall event, the bells and whistles, I suppose, that came with it, and maybe why this event was worth watching and might be worth watching again, And I think it was a very interesting. I did a preview the other day. I'm sure a lot of people watching this have watched the preview as well. And I think what I said in that preview actually turned out to be pretty correct. It was a card from bottom to top with well match-made fights. Whether it is the likes of Cody Gibson, Ray Borg, who you could argue are top, 10 to 20 fighters in the world maybe not the weight division they fought in, but in A weight division, and in some really good up-and-comers like some of the Dagestani lads we saw fighting guys like John Howard, and then even the two fights at the top of the card, I think they were maybe the main event aside, even that turned out to be a little bit, a good matchmaking event, and definitely the co-main event. So, that's the first thing you ask for on every card, right? When you're looking at kind of meritocracy, when you're looking at the card itself, that's the first thing you'll ask. Ask for it to be, okay. For us to kind of, as MMA fans, as MMA purists, a card needs that. Like, if it is just people getting absolutely smashed for the whole card, or the hometown favourites winning every fight, unless you're in Dublin now. maybe. I kid, but that's what you want. You want well matched fights, and they absolutely had that. So that was the first thing I wanted to say here. And as I said, we'll transfer back to the fights towards the second half of this video. But I want to start off with, as I said, the bells and whistles. And as anyone who maybe follows me on Twitter or listens to my stuff or reads my stuff, I'm a big one for that. I like talking about the commentary. I like kind of, testing out the commentary in terms of who I like listening to, what format I like listening to, and different things. And I'll start with that. I'll start talking about the commentary, because I saw a lot of people last night and they were very, very negative on the commentary. Look, and I can understand why. I wasn't 100% negative on it, to be honest. I thought I'll give my individual thoughts on the commenters. The play-by-play guy, I know he's done. Is it LFA, one of them? It was actually one of my maybe first times hearing him for a full card. Obviously, because I'm not covering the more regional or local American shows. I'm covering the ones here in Ireland and the UK and sometimes in Europe as well. So I'm not the biggest fan of that sort of like gimmicky play-by-play guy, where it is I have this catchphrase that I'm going to roar out 4 times per fight the second anyone, and what was it? Oh baby. It kept us shouting oh baby. And I'm also not a big fan of like a very, very jokey commentator, whether it's the play-by-play guy or whether it is the colour commentators. And I thought he had too much of that. Now, the one thing I do think from him, he's very, very well spoken, very, very sharp. And I think with a little bit of adjustment, let's say if the UFC decided to sign him and adjusted him a little bit, did different things at different times, I actually think he could be very good. I just think a bit gimmicky at the moment. So that was the first thing I would say about that. The second part of the commentary was the rest of them. Now, for the undercard, they had Henry Cejudo and Chael Sonnen in the booth, and then they had Kamaru Usman, obviously the welterweight champion of the UFC, with them for the main card. And look, you got out of Chael. I'll start with Chael. You got out of Chael what you expect to get out of Chael. He makes these proclamations of fact in the middle of the fight, like he does in his YouTube videos, and then if they turn out to be correct, great. Like if he says, Sean Sheehan is going to get tired here in the second minute, and like, you'd probably be right. And then if it happens, like, oh yeah, Chael called that one. But then if he goes, Joe Bloggs is going to get tired here in the third minute, and Joe Bloggs wins the 15-minute decision and looks stronger in the third, he's not quite right, is he? And that's what he does over and over and over again with every shot, with everything that happens. There is a proclamation. This is a fact. This is going to happen. Which, you know, we've seen, I don't watch too much NFL, but I believe Tony Romo is a bit like that, isn't he? And there's other commentators like that as well. Gary Neville here in soccer's a little bit like that, and he was more early in his career, and I think he's toned that down a bit now. But I like, in general as well, like with Chael, he's well-spoken. I like when he just kind of sticks to the X's and O's of the fight itself. I think he's actually one of the best in the world, to be honest, just because of how well-spoken he is, and he can, it's tough to get someone well-spoken to actually do that, to actually just call the X's and O's of what's going on in the fight. And I feel Chael does that really, really well when he's not trying to be, you know, YouTube analyst, YouTube personality. Chael Sonnen, he's really, really good at it. Just the MMA Chael, really, really good. I would say the same for Henry Cejudo. I had never heard him before, I don't think, on commentary, and I thought his commentary of what Chael was trying to do in terms of like calling what he thought would happen or calling how the fight was going in terms of tactics, Henry was doing that well most of the night. I think maybe later in the card when there was less or when Usman came on and there was less time to talk, he wasn't able to do it well. But on the prelims, I thought he was really, really good. You know, if someone was pushing the pace and it was kind of winning them the fight, he was saying that. If someone was kind of getting picked off the back foot and the person pushing the pace wasn't winning the fight, he was saying that too. I just thought it was a really good, a really smart commentary performance from Henry Cejudo early. Now, he was thrown in like the Uncle Chael, he was laughing and joking too much, going full Cormier at times, but I think for a first effort, I think he was really, really good. I liked him early. Now, the later it got, as I mentioned, when Usman came on as well, he wasn't able to do, I think, what he's good at. I actually think Cejudo in a two-man boot would be actually very good. Or I would like to see him given a chance in that, but with the 3 it was a bit tough, and with the 4 it was impossible, and he couldn't do what he needed to do, and it was all kind of witticisms and trying to make jokes and trying to make trying to throw it over to Chael and trying to throw it over. There was a lot of kind of throwing it over back and forth to them. Then Usman Usman was an interesting one because I liked how kind of calm he was in there and how well he actually called things. Like and I'll say it again, I know I'm saying all of them do it, but maybe it's a thing all commentators have to do. But at one stage in the Borg fight, I believe it was, he said, sometimes in fights you have to take shots and it's actually in your favor, because the other guy kind of knows after a while that he's hit you with some of his best shots and you're not going anywhere, which is not anti-groundbreaking or anything, but he said it very early in the fight, and he said it literally within the first minute. If you go back and listen to that fight, I think it was literally after like 52 or 58 seconds or something like that. And it turned out to be correct in that fight. Now, was that luck or was he smart and he knew it? I'd like to give him the credit for that. I think he knew it, and I think he kind of knew what he was looking at. And of course, Usman knows what he's looking at. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of like sitting there and commentating on it and making assertions, that's a very different thing to actually going in there and doing it. And I thought he did that really, really well. Now, I think he's another guy who would probably need a couple of years in the commentary booth before he became a top level commentator. But I think there's a bit of talent. Honestly, I think there's a bit of talent there with all of them. So I wasn't maybe as negative as the other people. The biggest issue, right? I think there was too many of them, first of all. 3 minute boot, I think, is too much. 4 men was scandalous altogether. No one could say anything. The pronunciations, now, anyone who listens to my preview shows now and will listen to some of the names I try to pronounce later on, mine isn't the best either, but theirs was horrendous. And Cejudo kept calling him Tyrone Sprung, I think, was it, or Sprom or something like that. Also, I really liked the MC, but his pronunciations also, he kept saying M at the end of words. It was just bizarre. But I didn't think he was bad either. So all in all, I think that part of it, look, we're off of a low base here, to be honest, with some of the regional promotions, because some of them can be so bad that when you see someone who's just like a little bit weathered in terms of their ability to call the fight, it's actually an uptake. Now we can look at the very top of the sport, like the UFC or Cage Warriors, in terms of commentary, and it wasn't near that, obviously. But for a commentary team put together kind of last minute, maybe I didn't think it was as bad maybe as some people did. So yeah, that would be my take on that. The other side of it, then, the broadcast. that was phenomenal. You know, I watched it. I couldn't get the app here. Maybe it's not available in Ireland or something. But I just went to the website. What was it? FLX Cast or something like that. Clicked on, sign. I think I had to give my email address or whatever. Signed up. Clicked on the video, live video. Clicked the cast button and cast it to my TV. And I literally didn't touch it for the rest of the night. Now, I've cast other things, everyone, casts from YouTube and different things. There's always issues with them, always. Like, even if it's YouTube, I have a brand new TV. I only have it since just before Christmas there, so it's not like I have some old TV and it's not working. I always find issues with them. There was no issue with this at all. I literally put it on at the start of the night. I turned off the TV with it still on, at the end of the night. It was absolutely brilliant. And that is another thing that there's been big issues with, like even with Invicta, when they started off, remember that they give out like a free YouTube thing, and even, the UFC last week with their NFT things, it all went to shite, and they had to give them away for free and stuff. So technology isn't easy, as someone here who's probably like shaking throughout the middle of the podcast, and my voice is probably gone off, and the microphone is probably, probably skipping a beat here a few times. It's not easy to get these things working right, trust me on that. And the fact that they have got it working right from the very start, I was very, very impressed with it, to be honest. Very impressed. But not just that either. I think the fact that they had put it out for free, I think is very smart. Maybe in the future, look, if they put it on Fight TV or one of them, you couldn't blame them. These people need to make money too, so you can't, you can't blame them for that. But I think the first one, I was actually talking to someone last night about, having a card and putting it out there. And someone with a couple of pretty big fighters. And I was kind of saying to put it out on YouTube, let the people see how many people will actually tune in for that fighter or tune in for that fight. And in future, if you're getting, if you're getting deals, if you're getting something big, they'll be able to know the amount of numbers you can do, and maybe able to know the amount of people you can draw, because people will tune in. And I think if they, obviously if they have a way of following the numbers and all that, I think it'll serve them well in the future. They had it free. A lot of people seem to be talking about, there's some Bellator cards and others that wouldn't have as much clout as this. Maybe not the UFC so much, but I think it did pretty well on the websites. I got to stay away from all that sort of stuff, but from what I've heard, it's done well on websites, and it's done well in terms of getting clicks and people being interested in it. So, and there's a reason I'm doing 2 videos on it as well. People care about it, and I think that's really, really good. And that, look, that's a massive thing in MMA. Just getting people to care, just getting people to tune in and watch your product, and Habib obviously helps with that, and, having Ali Abdelaziz and all his fighters. It's weird. Ali Abdelaziz is a manager and he still seems very connected to this, so maybe he needs to be asked a few more questions about that. What's the crack with that? But yeah, it's, people tuned in, and that's the main thing, and it is, it's a very hard thing to do in MMA. One last thing as well, I'm just looking at my notes here on the broadcast. Jen Sturger was there as well, and Felicia Spencer. I've seen Jen Sturger do it before. I think she's kind of an online personality or something. I don't know her that well. I've seen her on, she's been on Joe Rogan or one of those podcasts before. She was okay. She was okay. I don't think she was necessarily worse than most people. Felicia Spencer. Now, I'm a bit biased here in terms of I hate when they go to corners in the middle of the fight. I don't mind between rounds, but if it's 2 minutes, 20 seconds into a round and you go to the corner and the fight's going on and you're listening to these people in the corner or even show them up, I hate that with a passion. The Din Thomas thing, even, I'm not the biggest fan of that, or Trevor Whitman, in the UFC, where they have him give a bit of analysis. I don't mind that too much if it's good. Din Thomas does it well sometimes. I think Trevor Whitman was very good at the start, and I don't know if it's what they intend, to be honest. But Felicia Spencer was commentating on the cornerman, which, first of all, is a terrible idea, and second of all, she executed really poorly. I think that's an idea that needs to be thrown in the bin and never done again. Felicia actually came on and she was with Jen Sturger, and they did a little bit of a chat before or maybe after one of the fights, and I actually thought that was pretty good. So I like her in that role. I think she's pretty well spoken as well, so I wouldn't mind seeing her in that role again, but not this cornerman commentary. It's a stupid idea, a terrible idea. Please never do that again. So yeah, I will I will leave it at that at the broadcast and all of that. So yeah, overall I thought it was pretty good. Right, let's run through the fights here and talk a little bit about them. Let's just pull up my notes here. So it started off with two decisions from the first three fights. Majdeddine Ayadi came back against Muduev, which was a pretty good fight as well, and interesting one in terms of matchmaking. Like Radzhabov got the guillotine choke in round 1 against Zane. Look, coming into it, I talked a little bit about it on the preview show, but Radzhabov is one of these guys, who's been in PFL for a good time. I think they said in the commentary last night he fought for the $1 million twice, which tells you how good he is. And he got a lovely guillotine choke there early in the first. Shawn bunched in. I thought that was a close enough fight. They did a thing before the fight where Cejudo and Usman and Chael all talked about each of the fights, and they talked about Shawn Bunch being like one of the fastest guys any of them have ever trained with. And that's an interesting thing because he looks so slow now in some areas. He looks so wooden on the feet, and he looks like, Chael even said he looks like he can't throw his shots. He looks like he's just holding back a little bit, and that's a shame for someone who is as well-rounded or as athletic as he is, according to all these wrestlers. Sometimes it just doesn't translate, and for Shawn Bunch it kind of hasn't, but I still think it's a good signing for them. If it's just the name on the undercard and he never goes anywhere, grand. Or if he does come into his own, which I don't think he will at this stage of his career, if I'm honest, but if he does, perfect. It's worth the gamble. It's worth having him. So I think he's a good signing and a good one to have on the card for them. Then we had maybe the big shock of the night, but I thought it was a very early stoppage. Demarques Jackson versus Miles Hunsinger. Jackson was actually winning early, hit him with a few nice shots, and then hit him again kind of on the way down, and the referee jumped in and stopped it. Now, first of all, it was a very, very early stoppage. I don't think anyone could kind of disagree with that. It wasn't one of those ones where he was hurt on the ground and he wasn't moving and he got hit with a couple of shots. He was hurt, knocked down, hit with a shot, but was immediately moving. He wasn't out of it. It wasn't like he was flat down and he was on his knees. He was like his hand on the ground at one stage trying to get up, and then the second the referee stops it, he's there and he wasn't fine. By no means was he fine, but sometimes I look at this and I go, and it's the wrong thing to do here, because you stop the fight when you stop the fight. You don't stop the fight 5 shots later. But go with me. If he had taken 2 to 3 more punches, would the fight have been stopped? I think no in that situation, and usually in those stoppages, even if I do think they're early, I do think yes sometimes, but I would still argue that they're early just because you need to give someone a chance. But I actually don't think he would have been immediately finished here at all, and that makes it a really, really bad stop. Look, it wasn't a really, really, really bad stoppage, don't get me wrong, but it was just a missed time stoppage. And there was a few referees, I think his name is actually here, Andrew Glynn. I've seen him ref before, he's ref a few times. I just think he panicked a little bit. The officiating, the judging was actually grand. There wasn't that many, razor thin fights. There was one fight I thought it could have gone either way. I'll get to that in a second. But there wasn't much for the judges to do in terms of close fights or controversial ones or anything like that. So that was grand. But I thought the refereeing, Andrew Glynn, I think it was, he kept calling timeouts the whole way through the fight. Chael even said at one stage, well, was it a ball shot or is he giving a timeout, or is he just checking? You can't just go in there and check. He was either hitting the balls and you give him a timeout for 5 minutes, or he wasn't hitting the balls and we continue. So yeah, and he kept pulling up Rashad Evans' shorts and sticking the little the little lace out the back of his shorts in under his arm. I'm like, will you stop putting your hand up his fucking shorts? It was really weird. But yeah, the refereeing just wasn't great. And look, I think sometimes you can see, and you can always see the difference between a bad ref and a really, really good ref. And even sometimes we give a little bit of stick too much to certain refs who can do the job pretty well. But some refs are just, you just kind of tell they're not kind of made for it. And I think, he wasn't great now, to be honest. Yorgan the Castro then, maybe the most surprising result of the night, got a guillotine choke over brimful Shawn Asher. That's not his nickname. damn well should be. But yeah, he went in there, threw a few shots. Asher put him up against the cage. Thought he was going to, wear him out. Thought he was going to maybe wrestle him a little bit. But no, the Castro caught the guillotine. Brought his whole family into the octagon, or the hexagon, I actually think it was, afterwards, giving them hugs and all. So that was absolutely fantastic. Then to me, fight of the night, Dylan Salvador versus Amra Usman. Ospanov. Ospanov quit on his stool after the second round, which quitting his stool is a bit harsh. He said no mass, but he had taken a lot of leg kicks, and people were saying it was the leg kicks. I don't actually think it was. I think it was like the 20 unanswered blows he took before the end of it. He landed a lot of shots, Salvador did, and after Ospanov had won the opening, kind of periods of the fight, very, very good comeback. I think Grabaka Hitman was calling this before it one of the best fights of the night to look forward to, and he turned out to be right. It was really, really good. Fantastic from him. The one fight that I thought, it was a good name in terms of Anthony Njokuani versus Raimond Magomedaliev. I thought Magomedaliev would win, and he won pretty well. But Njokuani's a good name. He's been around for a long time, so it's a good test, in terms of a name. We can't complain about that matchmaking, and I'd say the same for Magomedaliev versus John Howard. Howard, he'd no quitting him, he kept going all day, but those lads are definitely two names you need to be looking out for, Magomedaliev and Magomedaliev, and two very good wins for them. And then we came to the top three fights. Ray Borg against Cody Gibson. Now, this was the only fight I thought maybe the judges could have gone either way, and it was, the second round was one of those rounds where everyone scores it for Borg, and I scored it for Borg too, but it could really have gone for Gibson. So I'll just run you quickly through the fight. Cody Gibson, for the first 7 to 8 minutes of the fight, was making a mockery of Ray Borg. Literally, he was playing with him in the second round. He was telling him what shot he was going to throw. He was talking to him. He was literally playing with him in a fashion that I don't think I've ever seen in MMA before. It was reckless at times, but he was just letting Ray Borg throw, countering him with these big left hooks that came inside, using his jab really well. Ray Borg was not able to close the distance, and I thought Borg was getting finished, but he didn't, and he kept going, and literally at the halfway point of the fight, Borg came on, started landing some shots, got the fight to the ground, landed big ground and pound. Arguably almost finished him late. Gibson got really tired. I remember tweeting him in the middle of the first round, maybe the start of the second. I said, Gibson needs to get tired here, or Borg has no hope. And that's exactly what happened. But Borg took it out of him as well. Look, the way Cody Gibson fought, you can't fight at that pace for 15 minutes. You're going to have to either get the finish or adjust things a little bit, maybe get a takedown, get yourself a minute of rest on top, or push Borg against the cage and then start it up again. It's just not possible, I don't think, unless you're an absolute animal with cardio altogether. But Gibson, he is that, but he's not that. He's no Ken Velasquez, if we put it that way. And Borg came on and dominated the third round as well. I think one judge gave it a 10-8. I wouldn't argue too much with that at all, to be honest. I think that was a fine score, but a very, very good fight. As a famous Irish comedian once said, it was a game of two halves, lads, the first half and the second half. And that's exactly what it was. But Borg went out and he won the decision because the judges thought he got slightly the better of the second round. And, I'm no judge, but I think he did too. So really, really good fight. This was the standout fight in terms of names on the card. And it turned out to be the highest level fight by a country mile. A really, really great fight. So from that to the bottom, as I've gone through there, those were the MMA fights of note, I suppose, on the card in terms of, up-and-comers, in terms of very good fighters at the moment. And to me, it was very successful. So, as I said at the start, good matchmaking, good fights. Can't complain about that at all. Then we had the two fights that were kind of the older guys with names that you put on the card to draw people in. And, neither of these were too bad either. Now, let me talk about Rashad Evans versus Gabriel Checo first. All right, I'm going to say the negative part first before I'll say the positive part. This was a really low-level fight in terms of quality. And sometimes when we have good matchmaking, as this absolutely was, in terms of fighter A with a fighter B at the exact same level or similar to it, which makes it good. Like if you put Sean Sheehan in there against Francis Ngannou, it's not good matchmaking. But if you put Sean Sheehan in there against Joe Bloggs off the street, who struggles to walk up a flight of stairs and get tired, it's more even. Or Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, that's even matchmaking. This is what that was. It was two lads on a similar level fighting against each other, but that level was a lot lower than anyone else in this card apart from the main event, let's say. This was on the commentary, and I think people on Twitter and online as well were saying, Rashad doesn't look as bad as he did before. He's looking good. He's doing good things. I went back and I watched his maybe 3 or 4 portions of them anyway, of his last few fights that he lost. He lost 5 in a row, I think, doing my preview for this. And this Rashad is noticeably worse than that Rashad. It looks a lot slower. It still has trouble landing punches and stuff like that. Now on the ground it's a little bit different. We didn't see too much of him on the ground on top in those fights, but I don't think Rashad is near the athlete he was even back then. Rashad had other problems back then, whether it was a mental thing or a physical thing in terms of throwing shots, but he look at his body. Just go and look at the way he weighed in. He looked physically a lot better back then as well. He's just not that anymore. But he came in there against a guy like Checo, who has zero striking whatsoever. Not the greatest takedown defense. Now, as I said in the preview, his jiu-jitsu is pretty good, and ground and pound, he didn't get on top much. Rashad did a good job. Like, Rashad's wrestling, I think, was good, and his jiu-jitsu defense was good. And once you had that against Checo, it was an easy night for Rashad, and that's exactly what it turned out to be. And he won the fight. And if you watch my betting show, I had him at plus 195, so good money to be made there as well. But a poor, low-level fight. Rashad won it well though. Like, this would be the perfect time for Rashad to go out. I hope he doesn't fight again. Like, he's out now and he's gone out in a loss in a co-main, or gone out in a win, sorry, on a co-main event of a pretty big card. This is the way to go, against a guy with a winning record and all of that. It's, look, maybe they can find someone else like Checo, but why? Like, and look, that's a discussion maybe for another day, but yeah, this was, it was a good performance from Rashad at this stage of his career, but this is nowhere near the Rashad Evans that we once knew and loved. Not even close. Then the main event, Sergei Kharitonov versus Tyrone Spong. Kharitonov ended up getting TKO finish, basically the midpoint of the fight. This was kind of the funny bad MMA that I like in the first round. We had the kickboxer, but they're both kickboxers, I suppose, but the kickboxer trying to throw some leg kicks, land some nice shots. He threw one leg kick and it landed, and Kharitonov kind of pulled up the leg and he wasn't able to land any more of the calf kicks. Then he threw the higher leg kick. Kharitonov caught it, put him on his back, and it was one of those ones, where that fighters try all the time, but that never works, where you like catch the leg low and then just like push him and try to tip him over like, I don't know, a cow or something. And it never works in MMA. And by God, did it work here. Kharitonov put Spong straight over on his arse and beat him up on top. I think Spong actually did, I've gone full fucking Tinry Cejudo here now. Spong actually did pretty well to defend, early at least in following the takedown. But Kharitonov did open up more as the round went on and landed some nice shots, but Spong did see out the end of the round. In the second round came, Spong was landing some hard shots, but you could see his face was reddened up, so those Kharitonov shots in the first round, they added up without a shadow of a doubt, and they, Spong knew he needed to land shots early, and he did, but Kharitonov stood up to him. Like, he's no joke on the feet either, Sergei Kharitonov. He's a very, very good fighter, but he managed to get the takedown again. He tried to get a body lock takedown, Spong stopped it, did a good job, but then he did get the fight to the ground, and it was curtains from there. Then ended up stopping it. The referee, it was a bit of a pity stoppage, I think, in the end. If it was another fighter, maybe I think it wouldn't have been stopped, but I think we all kind of knew where that fight was going from that point on, and the referee stepped in and stopped it. So, good win for Kharitonov. Another of my bets, another underdog, I think it was plus 159. So if you're following the betting show this week, you've made some money out of it altogether. So even those top two fights that weren't, merit-based fights or 2022 relevant fighters, they were still pretty good, and the whole card itself was pretty good. So if you haven't caught this card, I would suggest you go back and watch it, watch the finishes anyway, and definitely watch the Salvador fight. That was Salvador against Ospanov. That was probably fight of the night. Okay, that finished after the second round, but a very, very good fight, as well as was the Bar Gibson fight. So definitely worth catching him, and you know, the whole card in general. Looking forward to the next card. Easy card to watch, as I said. Very little lads. The fighters were in the cage. You know, as the last fight was barely out of it, went really quickly, and as I said, easy to watch as well. So I enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed this video talking about it. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.